Is Ragnarok inevitable? Must all stories of the gods come to their doomed and fated ends? Welcome back, my fellow gamers. It's me, Amanda. Kratos and Atreus are back, and with them a bunch of epic fights are soon to no doubt follow. Who would you like to see the former god of war Kratos fight against? Number 10. Kratos' acceptance of loss. What could be more scary than Kratos actually having to deal with all the trauma that he's lived through? I don't know about you, but I think dealing with trauma is probably one of the scariest things even everyday people like ourselves have to face in order to grow and evolve. It's just a scary thing to have to reconcile, but it's also really important, because if you want to grow, you kinda need to do it. And it seems in Ragnarok as though that might end up being the overarching theme. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming and you are loving God of War Ragnarok, which, I mean, who isn't right now, be sure to smash that like button. Number 9. Kratos' Responsibility. Early on in the game you have a vision of Faye. This isn't major spoilers, but it is a thing that happens in the game. In this vision you are joining her in a hunt for a wolf that has been plaguing your home in the Wildwoods. Kratos' response to the wolf attacks only comes after the wolf seems to be right near them, threatening the creatures in their immediate vicinity. Faye's response is, "A problem doesn't have to reach our doorstep for it to be our responsibility. If we have the power to limit the harm it could cause, we should act. Who are we to hide and do nothing?" Kratos answers, "We're not hiding." This seems to be addressing Kratos' past mentality that he would rather hide from his loss and his responsibilities, preferring in the past even to just kill those who hurt him and those he loved, rather than dealing with and accepting fully the pain of their loss, and his responsibility in his loved one's demise, and the demise of those around him. We also see this hinted at in his early on argument with Atreus, whose initial instinct is to actually seek out knowledge and answers regarding Ragnarok and who he is as Loki, whereas Kratos would rather prepare for the fight that he knows is coming. Once again, at the beginning of this game, he's more waiting for the danger to arrive on their doorstep before taking any kind of action. I think I especially love too that Atreus is like, look, I'm not saying that I want to fight anyone, I'm not saying that we have to go fight people and do a fight we're not ready for, I'm just saying we should do something, we should find out information. Atreus becomes Loki. Another theory is that Atreus fully embraces the personality and traits of the trickster god we have come to know from much of the media involving him. At least following this game, possibly a little bit in this game. Loki in Norse mythology is known for being both an ally and a traitor to the gods, and it seems based on Atreus' story going into Ragnarok that this could be something we could likely also see from him. After all, Freya was both an ally to Kratos and Atreus, but also quickly turns on them after the death of Baldur at the end of the last game. So it seems more than likely that we could see Atreus become more and more like the Loki of myth that we are familiar with as time goes on, eventually even discarding the name Atreus to just fully become and embrace Loki. However, at the same time, Loki is also known for being a complex god, and while being called the trickster god by some, this doesn't actually completely sum up his role in Norse mythology. The Prophesied 3. Spoilers in this point. While Fenrir, Atreus and Kratos' giant wolf, passes away at the beginning of the game, this isn't the last that we see of him. Fenrir in Norse mythology is actually known as being the son of Loki, one of the 3 prophesied children that Loki and Angerboda have together. There was Fenrir the giant wolf, Hel, his daughter, the ruler of the Norse underworld and goddess of death, and Jormungandr, the world serpent. Each of these 3 children were removed in some way from the gods, granting them distance as each was said to be dangerous, and there was a prophecy that the 3 would bring about much destruction and doom to Asgard. Fenrir himself was prophesied to rise again during Ragnarok and devour Odin. And as you know from the game, if you're at this point in the game, Fenrir, doesn't necessarily stay dead, as we've seen. While we have seen Fenrir and Jormungandr in God of War, we have yet to meet Hel. We have seen that there is a ruler of Hel, who is referred to as Hel, but it turns out that this is her title, not her name, implying that Hel has not been actually born yet, at least not the Hel that we know from Norse mythology. Number 6. Jormungandr's past. Spoiler alert! Is it possible that we could learn more about Jormungandr's past in this game? In the 2018 God of War, this was alluded to, as we learned that Thor and Jormungandr were destroyed to defeat one another during Ragnarok, with Thor apparently punching Jormungandr so hard that he would be pushed back into the past. past, which would explain how one day he just randomly showed up in the lake without an explanation as to really his origins. I had a theory that this would be addressed in God of War Ragnarok, as Jormungandr is also said to be the child of Loki and Angrboda in Norse mythology. While Jormungandr's origins were addressed in Ragnarok, with my theory actually being correct in that respect, as the serpent was established as being created in essence by Angrboda and Loki's efforts together, their child I suppose in spirit in this version of the story. I wonder if this carries on at all and becomes more established as time goes on, if we get to revisit Norse mythology at all. After all, Jormungandr at that point has a long way to go before they will be as large as their future world serpent self. Is it possible that we could see them establish a stronger bond with Atreus and Angrboda in the future? Because, you know, we see them go back to the past, we see them in their past, which is the present, and then what happens in between? There's a lot of time there where they're gonna grow. So what's gonna happen in their story? Will we see any of it? Number 5. Atreus' new protagonist. Spoilers! This is one that I think a lot of people were theorizing about after the end of the last game in the series, the relaunch of the series with the 2018 God of War, which is also a continuation of the narrative told in the previous games, which is all about sort of the Greek Pantheon and how Kratos dealt with them. Atreus is Kratos' son that he has with his second wife, Faye, after settling down in the realm of Midgard, hoping to leave his past behind him. However, it is revealed in that game that no matter how much Kratos attempts to basically avoid the gods, it seems he's kind of always on a crash course with them, even when he jumps to a totally different pantheon. Faye is revealed to be a frost giant, with her son Atreus also revealed to have been given originally the name of Loki. Throughout Ragnarok, there are even periods where we get to play as Atreus, and with themes of unavoidable doomed fates as well as patricide and matricide ringing throughout the series, it seems likely that Atreus will rise up and take his father Kratos' place if the series does continue past the end of Ragnarok. Or, you know, maybe not, we could go in a totally different direction. Number 4. Hell's creation. Spoilers! Something that I'm personally really excited to see whenever we get around to it is the creation of Hel. Hel is the daughter of Loki and Angrboda in Norse mythology, and I imagine she might be the only one of his children to be a literal daughter to him, if we ever do see that story. Also, it would be kind of cool to see if, like Kratos, Atreus also gets to go on an adventure with his daughter, who becomes the new goddess of Hel in the future, in her future. Of course, in mythology, she is in essence granted Hel to kind of keep her at bay from Odin and the rest of Asgard, as she is also considered to be quite dangerous. It's actually Odin himself, I believe, in Norse mythology who makes her the ruler of Hel, so it would be interesting to see how she comes into this title that matches her name in the future, if she does end up appearing as Loki and Angrboda's natural born daughter in the games at some point, if we ever see that. Ragnarok is apparently the end of the Norse chapter of God of War though, so we'll have to see how it goes, I guess. At least that's what people are saying now. I mean, I think they could still kind of continue it, but I don't know. It is pretty final the way this game finishes. Number 3. Another marriage. Spoilers! Well, I don't want this to be true because the relationship of Faye and Kratos was actually so beautiful. I feel like the reality is if we keep following Kratos' story, which is kind of possible, we could see him marry again in a new setting, which seems likely considering the response to God of War Ragnarok that we're already seeing, with some even claiming that it is one of the best games, not just within the franchise, but one of the best games of all time, which is a pretty big thing to be saying. Of course, it all depends on where the story takes us next and who ends up as the main protagonist moving forward, because I could honestly see it splintering and going either way. Number 2. Another Pantheon. Well, some have believed that the Norse mythology chapter could be the end of God of War. It's also just as likely, in fact, I would say it's more likely, that the God of War story will continue into another world of mythology and gods, or at least continue in some way. After all, these games have been extremely successful, and there are still a lot of pantheons and religions out there for us to explore in terms of all the gods in the world. Lots of cool areas of the world as well that we have yet to explore, and lots of ancient mythology that has not yet been covered in the games. I personally think also a more modern take on God of War could be interesting, a la something in a similar style to American Gods, or perhaps even delving into some of the biggest religious battles the world has ever seen and sort of how that played out with the gods. Alternatively, if we wanted to stay steeped in the somewhat mysticism of the past, there is another land we could venture to that has tons of great mythology connected to it, extending back thousands of years. Number 1. Egypt. That's right, we're talking about ancient Egypt, baby. I mean, who wouldn't want to journey back in time to ancient Egypt? It would be a fascinating place to explore. Now, I wouldn't want to live there personally, thanks to all the comforts and freedoms that we have here in the present. I think I would rather live here in this time, but it still would be cool to travel back and get a glimpse of what life was like back then. And through God of War, we could create a small portal, a window if you will, into the world of Egypt, and also of its myths, which are actually really fascinating. A tapestry rich with interesting gods and even more interesting stories involving them, how they interacted with one another, and what they symbolized. Egyptian mythology is both interesting and complex, and we've already seen an allusion to the gods of Egypt in the 2018 God of War game, so it is very possible that this could be where the franchise heads next, if it does continue on to a new Pantheon. Wow, what an amazing new addition to the series, not even just in terms of what you get to do in this game, but also just in terms of the voice work, the acting, the story that's told here. It's so good, the writing for this game, it's great. What are you most excited for in Ragnarok, and have you played this game yet? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, keep on gaming on. Pew pew!